everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. On our channel we talk about all things homesteading and try to implement some of those things on our rural 100 acres in southern West Virginia. In this video I want to talk about 3 tractor tire setups you should consider on your Homestead tractor. Well, tractors are obviously very handy to have on the Homestead, and they can get pretty expensive as well. So it is an investment we want to take with caution, but we also want to take care of our investment. Now, interestingly enough, tires on tractors can be very expensive. Front tires aren't as bad. I've actually replaced this one just in the past 2 years. I think I paid $150 for it, so not too bad there. But the back tires can get really expensive. I haven't had to replace those yet, so I haven't had to taste that pain. Tractor tires may not seem that complicated, but there are some different setup and configurations you can do with your tires and wheels to give you better functionality and to promote safety. The first setup I suggest is the location of your valve stems. Now, if you notice my tire here, of course, it's caked in mud, as usually everything around here is caked in mud. My valve stems are not on the outside of the wheels on both the front tires and the back tires. They're actually located on the inside. And the reason for that is, first and foremost, it protects the valve stem from damage from debris on the outside. Now, if you imagine if we had a large rock and I was driving along and there's a large rock there, there's a chance that I could, that rock could shear off that valve stem. It could tear the side out of it, it could break it off, and then of course I'm in a bad situation there. You say, well, Troy, are rocks only on the outside of your tires? Aren't they on the inside as well? Well, sure, those issues could still exist on the inside, but what I've discovered with bucket work, the width of my bucket is the same as my tractor tire, so if I'm doing any cutting against the hillside, then there may be times that my wheel here is coming in contact with the hillside, so my face that I'm cutting of the hill could end up really rubbing against this. So the better likely chance of bending a valve stem or breaking it off. Now obviously you could take that valve stem and do shorter ones. The ones I actually have on the front tire, they don't turn. They're actually vertical and very small. So there's different things you could do, but turning them in really just protects them from a lot of debris. I take my tractor through the woods a lot, so as limbs and stumps and those type of things that rub against my tires, there's a chance a limb could come in here and just happen to shear that valve stem right off. Whereas on the inside, it's less likely to happen. The bucket, the axle, all of those things are possibly going to push debris out of the way before it can get to my valve stem. Well, so the obvious question is, okay, Troy, how do I put my valve stem on the inside of the wheel if it's already on the outside of the wheel? Well, you're not changing the valve stem, you're not moving it. You're actually just rotating the tire, you're turning the tire. So if you think, well, I'm just going to flip the tire around, so take this left rear tire and flip it around so the valve stem's on the inside, that would work as far as the valve stem goes, but then your tire lug pattern's the wrong way. If you've got ag tires or industrial tires, almost all tractor tires have a direction for their tread, so you could be turning your lug pattern the wrong way, and then you could have a big issue there. If I was going to flip this left rear tire, I would move it over to the right side. So you can imagine just picking this tire up the way it's oriented and putting it over on the left side of the tractor. The lug pattern's still going the right way, but now this becomes the inside and the inside becomes the outside. So that allows you to, by flipping your tire to the other side of the tractor, that allows you to put the valve stem on the inside. Well, the second tire configuration you should consider is widening your stance by turning your wheels in or out. If you notice, and this is the case with most tractors. Now again, some of you guys know way more about tractors than I do, and you may call BS on this, so comment below. I'm sure you will. But most tractors, their wheels are offset or inset. So in this example, you can see how far back I can put my hand before I get to my actual lug nuts and studs there. So it's, you know, I've got a good 10, 12 inches there of recess. So as this tire is bolted to the tractor hub, this sidewall, of course, sticks out. Well, if I was to flip that over, if I was to take this tire and move it over to the right side, then of course the hub would bolt up on the inside, and that would make my wheel stance much, much skinnier. Well, obviously I don't want to do that. I want to go wider, and that's what I've done here. I've turned, when I first got the tractor, that's the first thing I did was turn my wheels the other direction. And fortunately for me, that put my valve stems on the inside. So I was getting a 2-for-1 there. So it allowed my stance to be wider of the tractor, which allows me to be a little bit lower center of gravity on hillsides. A little wider stance on an incline helps out with tipping, so the center of gravity is lower. So that was a safety factor I wanted to take into consideration there. So what are the cons of turning your wheels out? Well, if you do a lot of crop work, which I don't, the wider stance may affect the rows in your crops. There's obviously a specific reason why a wheel stance is a certain way that it is on tractors, because depending on the widths of your rows in large ag, then you want to be able to drive in between those rows. So that obviously may throw you off. Typical homesteader, I don't think is going to deal with that. Well, one other little side note about increasing the width, the stance of your tractor by turning the wheels out, is you can also buy hub extensions, and those would bolt onto your existing hub, and they're just a spacer or a cylinder. You kind of think of, I always think of the style that was big in the late 90s and early 2000s with cars. The guys wanted to customize them, have their wheels sticking out, look like skateboards. I don't know why people did that, but they did. But you could do that with a tractor to extend your stance even wider. But you have to watch and make sure there's a chance that could void a warranty. If you still have a warranty on a tractor, any of those aftermarket parts may be an issue there. Now you may be thinking, wait a minute, if number one is have your valve stems inside and number two is turn your wheels out so they're wider, is there a chance they conflict with one another? Sure, there's always that chance. If that's the case, if you want your valve stems on one side and then when you put the wheels out, it puts it on the other side, then you can always look at valve stem extensions. There's opportunities to buy extensions. I strongly recommend the metal ones. In fact, I'll leave a link below as to ones that I would use. But most tractor wheels have openings in them where you can, like my valve stems are located just across openings in the center part of my wheel. So I can take my existing valve stem and add an extension and simply go through that opening so I can have air access on the other side. I've actually read where some guys, if they don't have those openings, they actually suggest drilling a hole in the wheel to run your valve stem extension through. I'm not saying drill a hole in your tractor wheel. I'll leave that one up to you all. Well, the third configuration you should consider on your tractor tire setup is loading your tires. And if you're not familiar with what that means, loading basically means you're going to introduce material, most likely a liquid, into the tire. And that tire, of course, is going to become much, much heavier if it has several gallons, 20 gallons, 30 gallons, 40 gallons, however big your tires are, of fluid or liquid inside them. And that makes them much, much heavier. What's the benefit of that? Well, obviously, heavier tires are going to give you a much lower center of gravity. So again, if you're on a hillside, you're like here, everything we have is on a hillside. So if I'm driving on the side of a hill, the tractor is going to have a lower center of gravity, less likely to tip if those tires are weighted. Also, considerations like if you do a lot of plowing, I don't do a lot of plowing, but if you do a lot of plowing, as that plow digs in, it may want to lift the front end of your tractor up. So you load the front tires, and that gives you that ballast, that weight on the front end to keep the nose of the tractor down. Same on the flip side, if you do a lot of bucket work, and I do a lot of bucket work, and what I usually do is I'll make sure I've got a large 3-point hitch attachment accessory on the back to give me that ballast. But some guys will load just their rear tires, so if they do a lot of bucket work, the weight of the rear tire keeps the tractor rear end on the ground. You don't get that uneasy feeling of doing a handstand on your tractor. YouTube do-it-yourself tractor tire filling and just see what you get. There's all kinds of stuff out there. And I'll say in disclosure, I'm not recommending any of those DIYs. Take that risk on your own. And also, I don't have my tractor tires filled. I have not loaded them. Just something I haven't run into yet. I've had this tractor for 15 years now, and I haven't been in a situation where I think, man, I really wish those tires were weighted. Yeah, I may regret that one of these days, but we'll see. So what are the options to fill your tires with? Well, some guys just simply use water. You can obviously put water in your tires. If you've got tubes or no tubes, you can introduce water into your tires. I would strongly not recommend that, simply because unless you're in an area where you don't get cold weather, you always have a chance of that water freezing. And you talk about some bad news if you've got the tire frozen. Obviously, ice expands, so it could break the bead on your tires. Obviously, it'd feel like you're driving with a flat if you've got a big chunk of ice in it. So that would be a real problem. be super inexpensive, but it could obviously be an issue. Well, a solution that was used for the longest time was calcium chloride, and it was usually mixed with water. It was a dry powder or flake type thing. You'd mix it with water. It's 40% heavier than water, so it adds that much weight to the water. Some of the key issues with calcium chloride is it's toxic and it's corrosive. So obviously a spill, if you had a leak, could be bad for your ground, for your animals, all those type of things. But it also can start to promote rust in your wheels. I've read where a lot of guys have had issues where their wheels rust much faster because they have calcium chloride in their tires. Well, antifreeze is obviously an option. Antifreeze doesn't add any additional weight. It's still the same weight as water. Obviously, antifreeze isn't cheap. It is much more expensive than water. But of course, the benefit of antifreeze is it doesn't freeze. So you could be in sub-zero temperatures and not have to worry about that. Thing to watch out with antifreeze is obviously don't use propylene glycol, which is super toxic to animals. Dogs seem to love it. I guess it has a sweet smell to it, something about it they just focus on, so you can kill a dog real quick. Usually ethylene glycol, which isn't toxic to animals. Again, the biggest issue with the antifreeze would just be the cost there. Well, one of my favorite options that just cracks me up is windshield wiper fluid. You imagine you can get a gallon of windshield wiper fluid sometimes for 99 cents. So it's very inexpensive. And of course, windshield wiper fluid is good in sub-zero temperatures. There's additive there that obviously keeps it from freezing. So you could go to a parts store and just buy 50 gallons of windshield washer fluid and fill up your tractor tires with that. Kind of interesting. Well, in doing the research on this, just to make sure I was getting all the information together, I came across beet juice. And I was not familiar with that, but beet juice is being used a lot to fill tires. Beet juice obviously is non-toxic, it's safe for animals, it weighs about 20% heavier than water, not sure why, but it does. It's actually good to minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit. It's non-corrosive, so it's not going to eat your rims up. And according to the website that sells this under a brand name RimGuard, it is about 28 cents a gallon, and it compares that to windshield wiper fluid, which they say is about 23 to 30 cents a gallon. Again, it just depends on how you're buying it. So there's a branded product out there called RimGuard that's made from beet juice, and that's what's being used to load tires. Well, the last option for material for loading your tires is the most expensive, but it really is the lowest maintenance, I guess, and that's the polyurethane foam. And while there appear to be some DIY opportunities to do that, I wouldn't recommend that at all. I would definitely take that to a dealership to have them load your tires. And basically what that does is that foam is put into the tire, and it just pretty much makes the tire solid. So you don't have tire pressure to worry about, you don't have air, all those type of things to contend with, but you also have a very solid tire that cannot be reversed. You cannot take that polyurethane foam out of the tire. And from what I've read is you actually have to cut the tire off the rim if indeed you're going to change it. So you wouldn't want to foam fill a tire that's worn out and needs to be replaced soon anyway, because it's going to have to be cut out. So what are some of the cons of loading your tires? Well, of course, you can affect the ride quality. If you like to go cruising on your tractor, then you may have a bumpier ride. But no, there's a lot of guys that obviously transport their tractors from point A to point B. Do have to spend some road time there, so that could definitely affect the ride. Obviously, with all the liquids, depending on which ones you're using, if you have a leak, there could be some issues. There could be some environmental concerns if you're using the antifreeze or you're using the calcium chloride. Even if you're using the other liquids that aren't environmental concerns, then you just got a mess. You imagine if this was parked in your barn and this tire leaked and you come in and there's 40 gallons of windshield washer fluid all over your barn, then that's going to be a bit of a mess. It can actually affect your axle and hub wear. So there's possible concern that extra weight could make your axles wear out, the steering mechanisms, those type of things could experience more wear and tear. So if you have a tractor on your homestead, or you're considering buying a tractor for your homestead, as you're checking out the tires and the wheel configuration, consider some of these options with tire configuration and see if it's compatible with A, what you want, and B, with your tractor setup. It may be one of those things that really give you more functionality with your tractor and obviously improve safety. Well, if you like this video talking about tractors, let me know below. It seems like when I do tractor videos, I definitely get a lot of comments, some good, some bad, doesn't matter. We'll take it all. But let me know if you like tractor discussions. Again, I can talk ad nauseum about tractors. I enjoy them. But I do find them to be a really nice asset for the homestead. Well, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Check us out on our website, redtoolhouse.com. Take care, everybody.